So, how do you show up authentically as a business owner? And what does that even mean? If asked, I would say most of us want to show who we are to the world, but I'm going to guess that probably a large percentage of us are not doing that in the way that we want to through our personal brands. I'm curious as to what stops us from truly showing up as ourselves and what keeps us stuck in that place. My guest, Tracy Borreson, is a digital brand experience coach and is all about authenticity, specifically in the digital space. In a world where it's easy to hide and follow someone else's path, Tracy endeavors to lead with her personal brand as well as encourage others to find, own, and show up with their personal brand leading the way. Welcome, Tracy. I'm so happy to have you here to talk about personal branding with me.
Thank you, Kim. I'm always excited to talk about this topic.
I'm calling this a journey of personal branding, and I think because it really is. For myself, I was really just kind of surprised. I didn't expect it to be as challenging as it has been to develop a personal brand. I think it's something we hear a lot about in the business world, and I didn't expect the challenges. So I really want to dig in today, and I found it's actually helped me grow as an entrepreneur. And I find that really interesting. So I want to dig in a little deeper and find out some more. But I do want to start with you telling us a little bit about your beginning, because I know you started your career in a corporate setting. And yeah, you had a great paying job. You had, from what, everybody's looking in from the outside, very successful gig going on. What made you walk away from that and want to chase entrepreneurship or dig into personal branding a little more?
So first off, I had no
Loaded
desire to dig into entrepreneurship or to chase personal branding. But what happened to me in my career is that I realized I had hit the top of where I was going, and I was 36. And some people might be like, oh, wow, that's amazing. Great job. And I was just like, but really? I'm done at 36? Like, I've achieved all the things I'm going to do in my life? No, thanks.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound good for me. So it was the first, like, I was at a place where I was like, okay, I want to move up. But where do I go? I'm a senior vice president. I could become the president at this company, but I'm more of a sales and marketing gal, and I'm not really a finance and operations person. So president doesn't really sound like where I want to go. I could go to a bigger organization and be a senior vice president, but then you're dealing with a lot of bureaucracy. You get to do less of what you believe is right, and that doesn't sound very good either. I had just had my son, so he was not quite 2 at the time, and I wanted to watch him grow up. And I was like, I have no idea. I have no idea how to make all of these things happen at the same time.
Right.
But I know that it's not going to happen by doing the same thing that I'm doing. So I quit. And I had no idea what I was going to do next. I thought maybe I'll get another job. Maybe I'll be a consultant. Like, I don't know, but I can't keep doing this. I just knew I couldn't keep doing it. It had gotten to the point where I knew it was a bad decision to go to work every day. And I was like, how many days am I going to make that decision, knowing that it's a bad decision? It ended up being 3 before I handed in my resignation.
Only 3. Okay.
3 days. Yeah. Well, and then I had I had worked at the company for 8 years, so I had a 30-day notice period or something. But that was my I decide, I'm out. My boss tried to convince me to go on sabbatical, and I was like, I just know myself enough to know that if I'm coming back here, that I won't let myself fully explore where I could go. And I need to fully explore.
It was deep down, you just knew, right?
It was. I just had to do something different, but I didn't know what. So the reason I ended up in personal branding is because I had to go on my own personal brand adventure. I did not know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I liked doing. I knew what I didn't like doing. I knew the types of environments I didn't want to work in. I have a bunch of marketing skills, which are very desirable in the freelance market. So it was easy to find website content to write or email funnels to create, which I did for a while until I realized that I don't like to be the voice of other people. I don't understand why someone else would want someone else to be their voice. Like, this is your voice, right? Don't you want yourself to be your voice? And at
You
one
would
point
think.
I had a client who said to me, I was writing her website copy, and she said to me, "You sound more like me than I do." And I was like, there's something wrong with that. And it was so interesting to me because what I know in my practice is that what I do is I listen to what people say, and then I take their words and I write it on the website. Literally their words, because I want the website to match what they would say.
Right.
And so I was like, this is so interesting because people have the words. It's not that they don't have the words, but they won't share it with the people. What's up with that? So I got really curious about what stops people from actually showing up and saying those things that you'll say to a trusted advisor, but you won't say it to the world. And how can we break down those barriers that we create for ourselves that say our words aren't good enough? I'm not connecting with the right people. I need to know more about my target audience. If I just sound like them, I'll get all the business. Literally, I could spend this entire episode with mindsets that keep us stuck in why we don't want to use our voice. But I made it my mission to help people break those barriers down so all of these amazing stories can get to the people, because that's how you're going to help them. And if you don't show them the story, they can't know that you can help them. So let's peel away all of this stuff that's keeping us stuck from helping people. Because let's be honest, the world needs help right now.
You're absolutely right, though, about people not being comfortable with showing up as themselves to the world. I don't know how many conversations I've had, Tracy, with other entrepreneurs who one-on-one are just so willing to share authentically. And we get to that point of just trust and transparency. But then I look at their stuff online and it's not the same. It doesn't have the same depth that we had in that conversation. And it is fascinating. So that's really what I want to, secretly myself dig into today and explore a little bit more, because I think it's a real issue for entrepreneurs. And I think it's that source of frustration sometimes of how do we bridge that gap? But I want to ask you, because there may be somebody listening doesn't really know what a personal brand is. Like, what do you mean by that?
So my definition of personal brand is the experience you leave another person with when you leave the room. So it's not about logos. It's not about taglines. It's about how you make people feel. And this is why I say everyone has a personal brand, because all of us interact with other humans, whether it's our parents or our spouse or our kids or our community members, or we interact with other humans at the grocery store, getting gas, although gas is mostly an independent activity nowadays. But there's people around us and we interact with them. We push by them. Maybe we help them with their bags, right? Like there's things that we do because we are who we are. And that is your personal brand. And what gets muddied when it comes to somebody creating a business is that there's all of these rules the internet wants to tell you about what a brand is. And we get distracted by the logo for our podcast or our brand colors, and they have to say, I want to be trustworthy, so I have to choose blue, but I kind of hate blue, but I have to choose it anyway. And we get stuck in these like mindsets because someone else told me I should do it that way. And we forget that we already have a brand experience we're creating for people. And if we use that as our foundation instead of all the other shoulds that people want to tell you, then we actually have a stronger foundation to build a scalable business based on something we like to show up and do, something we're happy to promote. Dare I say excited to promote.
Dare you, yes.
Because it's about us and not about what someone else told us we should do.
I love the simplicity of that, because I think you're right. A lot of us can be confused. I know I certainly was when I leapt into entrepreneurship. I'm looking around going, okay, how do I, personal branding, is that a logo? But you definitely dispelled that myth, which It's really about how we make people feel. And whether we know it or not, and again, I don't want to repeat what you said, but you said it so well in that we all have a personal brand, whether we know it or not. So what does that actually mean? And throwing out if I don't like the color blue, then let's ditch blue. Let's do something that I like as part of my visual. I really like what you said about that. We hear a lot about being authentic.
Sure
and
do.
I would and I would say that it's probably a bit of a buzzword in the business world. I hear it a lot. I hear a lot of business owners talk about it because I think that's what everybody's striving to be. So tell me how you define authenticity when it comes to branding.
I think this is an awesome piece of the conversation. I have a very unique, or I've never heard someone else define it the same way that I do. So for me, authenticity is saying or doing what you would say or do when you want to say or do it. All of that is defined by you. So it's not someone saying, you should talk about all the hard times in your past because that's what makes you authentic. No, that's someone telling you what to do and you doing it because someone told you you should. It's about me sharing some of the hard parts of my journey when I feel like it's relevant. The example I always use is I have been through multiple miscarriages myself. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, you probably wouldn't know that about me. And it's not because I'm trying to hide it about me. I share it. I mostly share it on podcasts. I share it with other people who have been through that experience and need a listening hand, or where sharing my story can make an impact. But that's not all that I'm about. I'm about many things. I'm a mom. I grew up playing competitive sports. I like to drink tea. I find my peace in the mountains. I love Lego. If you could see behind me, Kim can see behind me. I have Lego everywhere. I'm obsessed with books. I could collect them. I'm going to have a library one day. All of these things. I'm a sister. I'm a daughter. I'm a granddaughter. I drive my grandma to and from her doctor's appointments. I love art. I don't know. I could go on forever, but there's so many pieces of me. And that's just one piece of me. It's not about sharing the same thing over and over and over. This is what a robot would do. A human is multidimensional. So it's about sharing what you want to share when you want to share it. And not because someone else said you should, but because you're like, you know what? This feels relevant right now. So I'm going to share that. It's about giving yourself permission to introduce yourself differently to someone seated at a table with you at a black tie gala versus talking to the moms or dads at the school playground, or at a business function, talking to accountants versus talking to marketers, right? There's different ways that we as humans connect with humans, and it involves listening and responding instead of just like saying a thing. And so when we look at authenticity from a marketing perspective, all of this comes to play. It's not about having one consistent narrative. It's not about saying the exact same thing you write on your website to everybody you meet. Your experience you're going to create is that of a robot. People currently at this date of this podcast recording aren't really building relationships with robots. They're building relationships with humans. So how would you say it right now in your words based on your experience? And again, this takes some peeling away of other people's filters, which are yours and which are other people's. But once you get to that, it's just like, I feel like sharing this now. I don't feel like sharing this now, and giving yourself the permission either way.
Yeah, and being okay with it. So I agree with you in the sense that I think so many of us tend to fall in the trap at times, following a template and following what everybody else is telling us we should be doing. So and don't get me wrong, it's wonderful to take courses and get structure and guidance for what you are trying to achieve. But at the end of the day, that's just a suggested structure to something that maybe you've got a new take on. And isn't that what this is all about? It's about bringing your uniqueness. Because when I think of authenticity, I think of being uniquely you. So why is that such a disconnect sometimes? I ask myself that because I struggle with the same things. So I find that really fascinating, that just the templates that we tend to struggle with could be keeping us and holding us back from actually showing up in a way that we're trying to achieve.
Right. So when it comes to a template, all templates have been created as a starting point. And the reason is because it's much harder to start from nothing than it is to start from something. So a template is not bad. Most people, however, treat a template like the answer. This is the prescription to my problem, and therefore I will implement it exactly as it is prescribed. That's the problem. That's the number one reason why people who use templates out of the box are unsuccessful, because those templates weren't created for you. They were created to be a generic starting point for people.
You're exactly right. And I would say that when I first got into business, I struggled with that because I thought I was supposed to fit in this box. Right. And I almost immediately realized I didn't fit in the box. I had to show up differently. And so that was a big aha moment. And I think wherever you're at in your business, that might be something that you may want to pay attention to. Am I trying to fit into somebody else's box that doesn't work for me? Well, I have to ask. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
A quick share on this one, because I remember early on in my career, I was doing some streaming on YouTube. And I had this coffee chat with this lady who's a YouTube expert. For those of you who are only listening, I'm using air quotes. You can probably hear it in my voice. I was like, oh yeah, I do these shows. It's like me and 3 other people, and we have this conversation. It's usually about an hour. Sometimes it's like an hour and a half. And she was like, oh no, if you are streaming on YouTube, you cannot have a show that's longer than 12 minutes. And I'm sitting there thinking, who has a productive deep dive conversation in 12 minutes? You can't. It's not possible. So I get what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. The logic in what you're saying makes sense. The average consumer on YouTube consumes a video that is no longer than 12 minutes. I get it. There's stats on it. You can look them up right now and find those stats. The thing is those stats are based on things like my son watching someone else coloring in a sheet of number blocks. Right? Because it's made to be a quick turnaround thing. This conversation I do is not meant to be a quick turnaround thing. And so if I try to fit myself into the YouTube box, assuming the YouTube box is better than what I'm doing, I lose all of my good, awesome sauce. Right? And that's what happens. And then you become another one of many on YouTube doing 12-minute videos. And to me, that's just not the goal, right? My goal isn't to be one of many. My goal is to stand out. And if that means that 37 people, I think maybe have only 37 or 38 followers on my YouTube channel. If that means 38 people who like that follow me, I mean, I'll be honest with you, 38 new clients is way more than I need in an entire year. Right? So that's fine. That's good for me, actually, because I would rather know those 38 people. I'd rather get into a conversation with those 38 people. I'd rather have those 38 people on my show than just have millions of hits on my YouTube page. And these are the things that we need to start to look at. Like, why are we doing this? Lots of people have a podcast. Why am I doing a podcast? Lots of people, as of the recording of this episode, 2 days ago, LinkedIn had its cutoff date for profile videos. And all of a sudden, everybody was in a rush to get a profile video loaded because they were going to decommission the feature. I've had a profile video for a very long time because I thought it was a good way for me to show people my energy, which you can kind of get in the written word, but not as much as a video. So I did it because I decided to do it. I didn't do it because they cut off the feature and I better do it now, right? There's
you're missing out on something.
Right. Yeah. So it's just about looking at who are you? What do you want to do? How do you want to show up? And then intentionally doing things, taking actions that are in alignment with that, instead of letting a platform dictate to you, this is what you should do, because this is what my algorithm says. And the algorithm, friends, is not playing your game. The algorithm is there to Like, keep people on the platform. YouTube's algorithm is there to keep people on YouTube. LinkedIn's algorithm is there to keep people on LinkedIn. That is its job. That's not your job. Like, I don't care if people stay on LinkedIn for 4 hours a day. Okay?
Yeah, and that's probably a whole other conversation, right? The algorithms. That's going, but super important. I have to ask you, what do you think we risk when we don't show up authentically in our business? What are we risking?
The number one thing I've seen in terms of results is scalability. So there's a lot of people who can follow someone else's prescription. Like, there's a lot of people who have become Facebook ad managers because it's an easy way to make money online, right? Good for you, but they don't care about it, right? They're just doing it because it's an easy way to make money online. That's not scalable, right? You're going to do it for a little while. You're going to mostly hate it. So you're not going to scale it. And it's going to be hard to sell because you're not like out there excited to talk about it. You're just doing a thing. It's like, I always use this example of shucking corn. I don't know why I chose it, but I'm going to keep going with it because I like it now. I could shuck corn. I live in the country, right? There's lots of corn. I could shuck corn and get paid to shuck corn. I could, and I would hate it. I would hate it the whole time I'm doing it. So how sustainable is that? I have now as my own business created something I don't love to do. So it's not scalable. It's not sustainable. We end up not showing up to do sales because it doesn't feel fun. We end up not showing up to do marketing because it doesn't feel fun. And then we have people who are like, oh, but don't worry, I can come and solve your problem of not having any ideas for content. No, the reason you don't have any ideas for content is because you're doing something you don't care about doing. You're not fixing a problem you care about fixing. You're not doing something you're passionate about. You're just doing a thing to do a thing. And at some points in our careers, we all do that, right? We all have jobs.
Yeah,
we work because we need the money, right? And that's fine, but that's different, right? That's us saying like, I'm going to choose this because it's the most important thing right now. But if you're going to create your own business, it's freaking hard to run your own business, man. It's way easier to be an employee. And if you're going to run your own business, if you're not doing something that matters to you, that makes you feel like you're making a unique contribution to the world, it's not gonna take you where you think you're going.
You are so right. You are so right. And really it's going to be short-lived, to be really honest, because it's something you're not passionate about or have no heart connection to is not going to be sustainable. And a little piece of you, I feel like, dies at a time when you're doing stuff like that. So I think that's where people get to the end of themselves and go, okay, what am I doing? And You're right. We've all done it. We've all dabbled in that kind of thinking. Yeah. And that's why we're doing what we love now. So talking about it.
Even then, right? Like I had a client earlier this year. I hate writing other people's copy. I said it already on the show. And I did some coaching with her and she's like, you need to write my website copy. And I'm like, no, I don't do that. And she was like, yes, you're doing mine. And I gave her this like ridiculous quote that I was pretty sure she was going to say no to. And then she said yes to it. So I ended up writing the copy. And the whole time I was doing it, I was like, I hate this, right? Like, this isn't fun for me. It doesn't feel like it uses my brain. It just is like dull work. And you can do dull work sometimes, right? Yep. Especially if you're getting paid super well to do it as a one-off. Sure, right? But
it's a great reminder why you are not doing that.
Pay attention. Pay attention to how it feels because, like, that's not sustainable for me. I would hate it. I would hate it. I would rather give this to somebody who loves writing content for other people, right? Those people exist. Give it to those people. Don't give it to me. And we have to stand up for that ourselves because people will give us work, right? Like you could go to market and be like, I'll do whatever you need me to do. And people are like, great. Can you put all of these leads from a trade show that I have into a Excel spreadsheet? Yeah, you could. Like I could do that. Sure. I actually told when I worked in corporate, I said to my boss, I'm like, I'm not doing that. We should hire like a high school student who wants some work experience to come and do it for like $10 an hour.
Exactly. Exactly. Not a good use of your time.
Not a good use of my time. But you have to stand up for what is a good use of your time. The personal branding journey is what teaches us what is a good use of our time and what isn't a good use.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. Do you think a personal brand, because we've talked a lot about entrepreneurship and how this can show up in your own business, but do you think a personal brand can exist or show up in a corporate environment? I know there's people listening that are in corporate environments probably thinking, okay, well, that's for when or maybe I'm not a business owner, but how do I have one in a company?
So first off, yes, they have a place in corporate work environments. Two, I'm not a big fan of saying should, but in this scenario, I'm going to. You should let your employees have their personal brand at work. And here's why. When people are living into what they feel like is their unique greatness, what do you think that does for performance? It skyrockets performance, right?
Of course.
And it's we spend so much time in corporate work environments controlling the situation. And like I come from corporate marketing, which I think is specifically bad because when you are a marketing representative of a company, you trade your personal brand to be a representative of the company. And we say, this is the company brand. We don't ask you what your brand is like and how those two things align. We just say, this is our brand, and your job is to make that come to life for other people. And I've watched this and I mean, as a leader, I tried to not let that happen, but it's very unusual in marketing that people are just expected to be the corporate brand. And we put so much time, effort, and energy into doing that. We don't even have any time or space or thought, brain space to go through that exercise of like, who am I? I'm just sold that this is what I should want in life. I should want to work for a big company with a dependable paycheck and all of these things. And I trade my personal brand to do that. That's the narrative. So we accept that as employees. I did it for a long time too. I'm like, this is just, and you have those moments where you're like, I wouldn't do that. Ooh, that's not what I would do. And then you do it, right? Because you're expected to, you get paid to do it. But all the times that happens, it's like a chisel, slowly chiseling away at your personal brand. And at some point, like it did for me, it gets to the point where you're like, no, I'm not willing to like trade who I am for this business who literally is going to go replace me. Although, fun fact, the last company I left did not end up replacing me. They kind of just like had other roles, which I like is kind of nice. I don't think individual humans are replaceable. I think a job title is replaceable. And when we become more than that, when we become more than our title, actually great book I'll recommend. It's called More Than My Title by Dr. Sarah Beth Burke. It's about being more than that because we are all more than that. But we have to decide that we're going to let those parts of us come to work. And I will tell you, as a working mom, this is a big problem for moms because I had a corporate career. I left to have my son and I went back and everyone just expected me to be the same person, except I'm not the same
You're just
person
not
at all.
No.
And I won't do the same things. I won't work the extra hours. I will look for ways to be more productive in my shorter amount of work hours because that's makes more sense for me and my life. And then people are like, no, we just want you to work 10-hour days. We don't want you to be more strategic in the 7 hours that you work. And I'm like, well, we are not aligned then.
It's not realistic anymore. And I'm going to tell you, this is making me think about when I left corporate, how much I had adopted the corporate identity for myself, that I struggled with developing my personal brand for the first while. I actually had to almost unhook myself from that corporate environment to understand what a personal brand even was. So I'm going to suggest that I'm not alone in that. I think people are probably really struggling and may struggle. If you want to have your own business and you're working for a company right now, I think it's time to think about that. What does that even look like? How much do you live under the banner of that corporation? And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. You are there to do a job and you're there to be all in. And I was all in. But when you leave that job, then what? Are you starting from zero? Do you even know who you are? Do you know how you want to be represented and what your actual voice is out in the world? Is it different? Chances are I'm going to say it probably is. Mine is very different than my corporate voice that I had. So that's where the challenge came in for me. So when you're saying that, boy, am I thinking that was my experience big time.
Yeah. But here's the other thing that happens is that we realize the parts of us that aren't aligned with corporate. And then we think none of us was aligned with corporate. So then there's this hard opposite flip that happens. And like, this is what, a lot of these things are tied into clothing for me for whatever reason. And I like, when I was in corporate, I always wore skirts and blazers and jewelry and all the things, right? Like, that's how we look professional. And then when I left, I was like, oh, sweatpants and all these things. I'm mostly on Zoom. No one's going to notice, right? The thing that I didn't realize is that, like, that's not my version of me either. That's not the version of me. That old version of me isn't the version of me either. There was something else. So, like, what I saw, like, quite honestly, I love the whole entrepreneur t-shirt and jeans and a blazer thing. I think it looks great. I hate it. I hate wearing jeans. I would never wear a pair of jeans in my life. I hate them. They don't fit me properly. That is awesome. So, like, just a couple of weeks ago, I went and I got brand new pairs of dress pants, and I sit in my home office wearing dress pants because they're more comfortable and because I like them and it makes me feel professional. But all of those reasons are about me. It's not about someone else seeing me and them thinking I look professional. No, it's about me. Early in my career, I worked in a call center. Back in the day when people literally just call you on the phone.
What is that, right?
Nobody sees you, right? Nobody sees you. There were people who would come to work in like cutoff shorts and tie-dye tank tops and flip-flops. And I was just like, I can't. It's not me. And everyone would make fun of me because I would constantly wear like khaki pants and a polo shirt. And they're like, oh my gosh, you're so fancy. And I'm like, this is how I feel comfortable, right?
And what is wrong with that, right?
And this is the thing. We give so much power to other people when we're just like, okay, you go sit over there and look
you cool. Do
you. In your jeans and your t-shirt. And I have a client who always wears like pink Doc Martens. And I'm like, that is awesome. And I would never, right? Although I do have pink headphones, right? Like, do you, right? And when you are an entrepreneur, and quite honestly, again, I don't understand what dress codes are. Just another way to control people, right? Like, who cares what people wear at the office? Like,
hey, I've got my Led Zeppelin t-shirt on today.
I love it.
Anybody who knows me knows I'm probably going to show up in some kind of band tee. And I wear them with blazers. I wear them with jeans. I wear them with leggings. Like, that's just, like you said, it's just me. But did I do that in corporate? No. But, it just wasn't appropriate for where I was at. But now.
But this is like those mindsets that switch, right? When we say like, okay, corporate is dress clothes and heels and entrepreneurs are t-shirt and jeans, but what if you're like me and we want to be an entrepreneur who wears dress pants and heels?
Then we celebrate that.
Yes. And you gotta go on that journey and be like, oh, just like, maybe I'll try a rock band t-shirt, right? And you're like,
exactly.
I kind of rock it. I do have a Huey Lewis in the News. Not that I would consider that a rock band, but like, these are the things, right? But I wear it as pajamas. There's no right answer here. It's about figuring out what feels good for you. And when you feel good, other people feel good around you. Yeah. We talk about building confidence. A lot of people talk about personal branding from a confidence building perspective. I want people to see that I'm a confident person. If you're faking who you are, you're not going to come off as confident. You're going to have to spend so much effort and energy on faking it. When instead you could just and I'm not saying it's not a process to peel these layers away. It is a process to peel these layers away.
It is a process.
I've been working on it for 3 years and I still get new versions of things I have to peel away. And that's why it's a journey. It's going to keep going. There's not like an expiration date on your personal brand adventure.
Right. You're right. And it is a process. And I'm still in the process. You're still in the process. We'll probably be in the process forever in terms of, because it's growing. We're all growing. But it's not, somebody might be listening thinking, well, that's fine to say. That's great advice. I love what you're saying. But what about, what if they just don't have the confidence to do this? How much bravery does this really take? And I just, what is the work that you do with your clients to get to the place where there's that tipping point of, yeah, I'm willing to take the risk to show up who I really am?
It's one, the journey is different for everyone. But if you're sitting there today and you're saying, I wish I was more confident. Oh, listen to Tracy and Kim. They sound so confident. I don't know about you, Kim, but I did not always sound this confident. I chose to go on a personal brand journey. I literally took 3 months off to say, like, I'm going to discover myself. And I appreciate that I had the privilege to be able to do that. I had the financial situation and all of those things to be able to do that. But we don't give ourselves enough time. We sit there today feeling unconfident and we think there's like some magic pill that can make us feel confident tomorrow. And unfortunately, there are lots of businesses and services that are marketing that is true, right? You can just eat this gummy and you'll be skinny for your whole life, but you have to eat the gummies for your entire life. There's so many things that are telling us that we don't know the answer. Someone else has the answer for us. And when it comes to your own confidence, your own personal brand, your own ability to public speak or show up and have a sales conversation, all of those things come from inside of you. And the very first step, so bravery, heck yes. And bravery doesn't happen because we're not afraid anymore. The reason why we have to be brave is because we're afraid. I use this example all the time. So my son, he's 5. He was going to pre-K this past year. And there was one day where he just would not let go of me and like outside of the classroom. And I was asking him, like, what are you feeling? Scared? Or like what? Yeah, what are you scared of? I don't know. And so we tried to talk about it, but he was just in this place of being scared. And he didn't know what he was scared of, but he just felt scared. And I'm a big believer in that I don't actually care why you're feeling. I mean, I can help better if I know why you're feeling scared, but I appreciate that you are feeling afraid right now. And so I looked at him and I said, do you think we could practice being brave today? And he thought about it for a minute. And then he was like, yes. And he picked up his lunch kit and he went into the classroom. And I was like, he didn't do that because he wasn't afraid. He did that because he chose to be brave. And so, again, like, it seems simple, but it really is just us deciding, I'm going to do this. And if I'm not feeling confident and I want to be confident, I got to go and I got to try something. And we're going to try things that don't work, right? I know I have, Kim, I'm sure you have. Right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
We try things that don't work. And there's another step of bravery we get to practice in there, right? Like, well, that didn't work. Okay, I guess that's not the thing for me. What else can I try? And I'm going to screw up the quote.
Practice.
There's a quote about, like, the people who succeed are just the people who decide to take one more step after the last failure, right? Like, that's it.
Yeah, it's simple, but it's not easy.
Right.
And there's that saying too that I've used in the past, do it afraid. And I really like what you said. It kind of marries well with the thought of practice. How are we going to practice bravery today? How do we do that? It's literally taking one step. So maybe that's part of our challenge for our listening audience today is one step is better than no steps into taking a step and showing up who you really are, and being okay with that, being okay with a bit of pushback.
Yeah.
It's okay.
But also being okay, like I said, my authentic version of me today is different than it was 6 years ago when I was in corporate. So when we show up and we practice authenticity, there's an inherent evolution that happens. And it's not about saying, I'm going to show up today and I'm going to be this and then I'm going to be this for my whole life. Because that's not authentic anymore. You learn, you grow, you change, which means how you show up changes. And people are concerned then that, like, well, what does that do to my consistency? I've been like, everybody's telling me I need to be consistent, right? Yes, you need to be consistently you. And if you evolve, now you're being that old version of you, now you're pretending. So
that's right.
You've broken that authenticity. I think it's one of those things that's kind of tricky to get our brains around, because it's easier for our brain to say, like, I'll define this today and then I'll be that forever. Except it's just not the way the human experience goes.
Yeah, and maybe this will help somebody, but for myself, when I started my business, I hadn't actually told my personal story. And I have, a personal story that had many challenges and failure attached to it. And so I felt a lot of shame about that personal story for years. And up until that time, I just wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to share it publicly. I wasn't ready to dive into those kinds of things. But deep down, my heart told me, and in that, like you said, it could be different for everybody, but my heart told me that I needed to be okay with sharing my story. So it actually helped me move forward, doing some of that hard work and being brave in the moment and saying things out loud that I wasn't used to saying out loud. And so I say all that to encourage somebody that may be even struggling with sharing their personal story, knowing they should, knowing they want to. And if you're not ready, that's okay too. This isn't a challenge to tell your personal story if you're not ready and not in that space. But if you know you are, and you know there's a step you need to take forward, it's okay. It's okay to take that step. I took the step. I'm still here. I'm still, in fact, I'm much further ahead today than I was when I was being challenged to tell my story and just wouldn't. So there you go. Just a little bit of inspiration there as well. And I know you had mentioned a similar thing. You tell your story, and I didn't know that about you. And it just makes me understand you a little bit more and be connected with you a little bit more. So,
well, and one of the things I would encourage people to do is that there's probably small bits of your personal brand that feel easier to share. I might not feel quite so scary to share that I'm a Lego fan, or that I love books, or that my favorite author is so and so, right? Like these are things where, like, okay, if someone has a different favorite author, who cares? We could still bond over books. Or we can both drink tea and not coffee, or we can both enjoy the mountains, or I could talk about the mountains. I participated in this really cool LinkedIn poll about mountains versus beach. And I was like, I hate the beach, mountains. And that's not the right answer or the wrong answer. That's my answer. And so there's pieces of you that you've likely found easier to share. And start with that, right? That's not inauthentic.
That's a good suggestion.
You deciding you want to share that today. I was driving through the mountains and this is what I was thinking. Boom, social media post, right? It doesn't have to be those deep down things. You can practice so that when you feel called, Kim, I loved your story because what you said is your heart was telling you it was time to tell your story. Someone else wasn't telling you it was time to tell your story. You were telling yourself. That's what it looks like to listen to your personal brand. Your personal brand is saying, it's time. It's time this story comes out. And maybe you start with a sneak peek of it. Right? Tell the whole story right away.
That small step.
Practice letting it come out in those meaningful ways. Maybe it's in a one-on-one before you share it on a podcast, before you share it on a stage somewhere. This is actually the process that every single person goes through, but we often think we have to jump right to the end, to the success stage.
Yeah,
All of the growth comes in the messy middle. So just start with a tiny bit of your story.
it really does. Okay. Well, I want to get practical if we can as we try and wrap up this conversation, Tracy. I want to know for our audience, what are the critical components to building an effective personal brand? What are those steps that are needed? Just walk us through what you think here.
Yeah. So the first bit of it is clarity. Like we got to know who we are, right? And as we talked about a lot, it's not like we're gonna. I always say it's not like a light switch. You just like turn it on and then everything we know everything about ourselves. No, it's a process, but it is about intentionally deciding I'm gonna go and I'm gonna get clarity on who I am. And I'm gonna actively peel away the layers of me that weren't put there by me. So clarity is number one. Number two is conversation. So when we talk about sharing stories, I think a lot of times our brains too get in this like one-way monologue mode. And then people
Yes.
are like, oh my God, what do I say? And this has to be perfect and this and this. But when we just get into conversations with people who we're comfortable with for whatever reason, right? That doesn't matter why Kim and I vibe with each other. It just matters that we vibe with each other. So we can have an open and honest conversation. Find your people that you can have conversations with and have conversations that you care about having. This is like, I did Toastmasters for a very long time and it always boggles my mind. Like, why do people talk about things they don't know? Don't care about talking about.
Good question.
Lots of people do that because they think I need to choose. So I got to do I have to practice my presentation module. So I got to do a presentation and I'm going to do a presentation on do a presentation on something. Literally, I did mine on making balloon animals because I know how to make balloon animals. It's not like I learned
I'm learning so much about you today, Tracy. I really am.
Not like I learned how to make balloon animals so I could do this speech. I did a speech because I know how to make balloon animals. It is a fun skill to have. I used to be a party planner.
Yes.
But we like talk about what you care about, right? Don't worry about your ideal client. What does your ideal client want to know? Who cares? Erase it from your mind. Your ideal client wants to hear what you have to say. And if you can switch that in your brain to say, like, I can talk about what I care about, and there's people who want to listen, and those people are my ideal clients, then you have a much faster path to finding your people, which is actually stage 3, which is community. Everything in a business is a community, and we can either treat people like transactions or we can treat them like valuable members of our community. I don't know about you, but I know for me, community is literally the thing that gets me through my day. And it's not because I have people who pay me, which are part of my community, but I also have people who allow me to share my story, like Kim is giving me an opportunity right now. I have a mastermind that I run that allows people to thought experiment with each other about what is authentic. Like these are, and those are my people. It's not everybody's people. I actually do a fun exercise in most of my workshops that I call the personal brand meditation. And it helps you connect with like, who are those people? If I was in a completely safe space where I feel like this is me, who are the people in that space? What do they look like? What do they sound like? What do they feel like? Go find those people. Don't worry about the other people right now.
And it may surprise you, right? Who those people are.
And this is why I am not a fan of targeting based on demographics and household income and all of these things. I don't know who needs to hear this today. I don't know who needs to hear the story about authenticity, but I care about telling the story about authenticity. So I'm going to go and tell it. And it resonates with people who needed to hear that today. Come and identify yourself to me. Who wants to be in this conversation? And then this is where all these things start to come together, right? It's not like a linear progression. It's like all of these things are a part of like a Venn diagram, right? And we get to that juicy middle bit where we're like, oh, we have community and clarity and conversation all working together for us. And that's us. That's our personal brand in that sparkly middle section. And if we can do all those things and we can find ways to intentionally bring our personal brand to life to accomplish those things, which is different for every person, then we actually get to show up, whether it's in a business or as an employee or as a mom or as a community member. Just show up wherever. It doesn't matter where you show up.
Yeah, you're in different stages of life too,
You get
right?
to show up
in
as
different
yourself.
roles.
Yeah.
So good. So good. You gave us such practical tips, at least to get started. By no means is that, an exhaustive conversation on personal brand, but this is a great foundation for anybody to start thinking deeply about what it means for them. And I really, really appreciate what you shared, and what a great discussion, Tracy. I'm so inspired. Myself, I definitely have takeaways from what was discussed, and maybe what the next level is for my own personal brand. So I feel like mission accomplished.
Boom.
And if our listeners want to go back and listen, we will have the transcript available and links to find Tracy available on kimwestland.ca. So we'll have all that available to you at your fingertips. And thank you, Tracy. I just want to thank you for being here and sharing such amazing wisdom with us. And we hope to have maybe a part 2 of this conversation.
It was my great pleasure, Kim, and I am always down for a part 2. Especially if the listeners are like, yeah, let's have some more of that.
That's right. Okay, noted. And thank you, of course, to all of you for tuning in. See you next time.